うん Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 19th session of Talksopedia. Yes, we are in the 19th session, and we have a very special guest today. But before I introduce our guest speaker to all of you, let me just remind all of you our certain guidelines and rules and regulations of this online platform. Keep your audio and video switched off. You may switch on your video if you think that you are in a comfortable position or in a comfortable place. You can keep a notebook and a pencil or pen along with you so that you can take down important points from the session. Talksopedia, as you all know, it's a weekly online talk series wherein speakers from different parts of the world come here, share their inspiring stories with the audience, and motivate them to face challenges in their lives. It's an initiative by my educational events company, Speak and Shine. And as always, today we have a special guest here. I had met our guest speaker, I think in the year 2018, when I had gone to attend Birla TEDx talk session. And she was there, fully decked up and so happy, cheerful, laughing. And I wondered, how could she be so happy and cheerful despite all those challenges that she is facing? Our guest speaker is a stand-up comedian. She is an athlete. And she also runs an organization which is known as Muscular Dystrophy Qatar to raise the awareness of this special condition within the country. She was named one of BBC's 100 women, signifying her as one of the most influential and inspirational women of the year. Please help me welcome our guest speaker, Nawal Akram. Nawal, please switch on your video and let me put you in spotlight. Could you please unmute yourself?
Hi everyone, how are you? Nisha, thank you so much for introducing me. You're thank you for your kind words. You are praising me more than I deserve. Hi everyone. So as Nisha was telling that I've done I've been jack of all trades in one way, that I've gone in every single field to try to test it out. But one of the major things of me starting doing this, and what I think a lot of people still don't know, that I started all of this just because I was not getting education when I was 10 years old. So the last time I was in formal education, I was only 10 years old. Now, I was born with muscular dystrophy Duchenne. And to give, to not to bore anyone out, is that I was born with it. I was born with it, and then I got diagnosed when I was 6 years old. Now, my mother saw these changes on me when I was around 4, but her going to the doctors and, telling them she has had 6 children, she sees difference in my body and the way I walk, and also that I started talking when I was 4 years old, and I never shut up after that. So seeing all of that there is that, for these 2 years, she kept running around to different hospitals, and no one believed something was wrong. And then she forced the doctors to get a biopsy done and more blood work, and it came out that I had muscular dystrophy Duchenne. Now, for people to understand in a simpler term, that it's a muscle wasting disease. Essentially, you lose all of your ability to move, to talk. The brain functions are still the normal, but you just kind of lose slowly the ability to do everything. Now, and also it's a very male dominated disease. So it starts, so me having it as a female, it's only 1 in 50 million chances to even have it for me. So, and I was my parents' first child that had a disability. So, and no one in their family had a disability on both sides. So this was a very new adventure for my family. And they were trying to learn themselves, and they were learning from me, to adjust to it. Now, starting from the core in the family life, because I was their first child with a disability, they had no idea how to manage it. And then seeing their surrounding growing up was that the community was not supported as a whole. Is that instead of encouraging and helping me grow up as a normal child, they pitied my parents, and this was something they didn't want me growing up around the long term. So they took me away from the community environment and just kept me around education. Now, when it came to education as being my main environment, now I had to deal with parents that were my friends' parents, and they had this negative mentality of what a disability is. And what I mean by that, by seeing in our life, and even hundreds and thousands of years ago, disability has existed. It has existed throughout our lifetime, and it will exist even after our lifetime. And I wanted to bring in one of the facts that everyone will essentially have some type of disability. So for these parents and community not to normalize it was a big issue that, even as a child, I was thinking, seeing from my environments, going to the hospitals, going to different areas, seeing that everyone gets a disability, like any ages. So why was my teachers or these parents of these children, or even people that were surrounded by my parents, why did they view me that way? Now, this is a question I had when I was around 8 years old. And this continued to the education system because being born, brought up in Doha now, for my particular issue was that being in a private school, they didn't want to accommodate my disability. And that led to big issues that when I was 10 years old, I was taken out of education. And that was a big change in my life, even as a 10-year-old. I was dealing with these changes that I had no control over. And it made me question, why are adults, why is the community being this way? Um, why is a place, a system that should be accepting me, taking me out, right? Again, I was pushed into um, pushed into the struggle at a very young age. Essentially, when I was 12 years old, I eventually went on wheelchair. And it was not due to my condition, it was just due to a surgery that went wrong. So that into a new chapter in my life starting as a 12-year-old, I had to adjust to this new life of doing relearning. When you go on a wheelchair, you have to learn to do everything again. So see it as walking all over again, or eating or dressing, and kind of also relying on others, asking others for help. And this is something that taught me that our life has like these layers and we grow with each one. So when I essentially went on wheelchair, I didn't think it was actually scary. I just thought it was just part of life. It happened, it was meant to happen. So I adjusted very fast to it. But I think eventually I had a burnout because I was applying to schools and the schools would reject me on my disability. I would go into the community, and instead of acting normally, they would exaggerate everything that I did. So that having, adjusting to a new life, learning to do everything all over again, and then going out to a community that is again questioning everything about me, it made me very bitter. For 2 years, I didn't really leave my house. I was going out, but I was going out for my hospital appointments or sometimes for family dinners that we would be doing outside. But then that was it. Other than that, I was very bitter. I was like, why should I interact with this world if they don't accept me as I am. And that went into 2 years. So this went till I was 14 years old. I kept questioning, my existence. Why is the world like this? And I don't know what clicked. I still question to this day that I don't know what clicked in me. And I thought, I was reading more. I started reading more, say, around philosophy and history. And these are the things kind of expanded my mind as a 14-year-old, that our community acts the way they do because they've been taught this from this previous generation. Our previous generations didn't do enough work of integrating a very normal part of society in a normal way. So people behave the way they do, not because they mean to be bad. It's because they or mean to misunderstand you. It's because something that they were taught in their generation that has continued. That is not essentially their fault, but it is their duty to get educated. Now that led me to educate myself on how to educate other people. And one of the key things I learned to a very healthy start was clearly communicating my needs and my wants and boundaries with people. Boundaries helped me shape everything around. So the way I was dealing with people and what I didn't tolerate. When you tolerate disrespect in your life, and the person that you're communicating with, whether it's your family, your professional life, or even activities that you do, and if you tolerate disrespect, people will get used to treating you with it, with how you allow them to treat you. So this was a very strong first step. And another part that played a very big role was my mother's humor. My mother's humor in everything. And what I mean by that, I remember being like 12 years old and on my chair, and the first thing my mom was doing, she was pushing my chair and, kind of, racing with my siblings when they were running. And I actually laughed in that moment. I remember the first time I laughed on that. And it made me realize, because even essentially my siblings took the chair and they did it. And it was a very funny moment. I remember that. This was the first day I was leaving the hospital. And that clicked in me something that it made it easier for me to adjust and cope with what was going on. It was different, but I coped it more calmly because of humor, being involved in it. And essentially, I think my parents were not monitoring what I was watching online, which were a lot of comedians, which was like, Kevin Hart, or Russell Peters, Gabriel Iglesias. So these are very few to name, but these were kind of the main ones. And you can imagine how, as a 12 to 14-year-old, watching these while being at home shaped my personality. Is that I learned to communicate with people in a more sarcastic tone, because one of the big things is that whether we like it or not, our looks do influence people. It's just human nature, it's nothing personal. But as humans, we are very programmed on looks. Um, and now, because when people met me, they were like, "Oh, Nawal, you're so cute. You're so," they automatically assume I'm very naive because of my disability. And I think, yes, I was nice to people, but I think it's a very stereotypical image of meeting someone with a disability because of it being seen as so delicate and innocent, and in that way that it made me shape my personality to not be, even though it was myself, I didn't want it to be so stereotypical. So I started being more sarcastic in these moments. And I think it clicked something in people that it threw them off. And I think that is sometimes very important to throw people off. I know it's important to be yourselves, but sometimes to bring out different sides of people, you have to trigger it in some way. And I think sarcasm was my way of making people realize that, hey, I understand what's going on. You don't need to be nicer to me just because I'm disabled. And I think it made me realize to teach people, yes, we have this human instinct to judge people by appearances or even by societal expectations. To a societal point of view, and their beauty standards, I think particularly being Asian, being Kashmiri, being Pakistani, I think it's just in the Asian culture to see white, skinny, like basically skeletons as a beauty standard, right? And I'm not a skeleton, and I'm disabled, so I didn't fit in that. And I think bringing that into my humor, that making fun of these unrealistic societal expectations of men and women have dealt with these unrealistic body and beauty standards. So being disabled and trying to fit myself into those unrealistic beauty standards was just it was just unrealistic, unfathomable, and it was not even practical. And I think comedy gave me that part to make fun of these situations that um they're not realistic and they're not logical, and to be focused on something reasonable. And being reasonable was focusing on what I did have, being content with what I have. Um, and that also shaped on how I eventually dealt with other stress in my life. Before doing comedy, I was actually in Paralympics. So I was training to be an athlete for Paralympics. So I was in that training for 2 years. And I was doing it. I enjoyed the sports. I think sports is a great thing, but I feel like it was not giving me a purpose in life. And I think that made me realize that having a purpose in life is very important. It drives us to do so many things. Um, and with the high rate of depression in today's world, and also over also the difficult times that we're going through, it's very common to go in a rabbit hole of depression. And to push ourselves out of it is to find little things that help us find purpose. So doing sports, it was great. And sports helped some people, but it was kind of not my purpose in life. So I was still struggling to find, all right, I'm doing something new. It's different from what I did, but doesn't feel right. By my gut feeling, it didn't feel right. So comedy was something I still wanted to do. So eventually I signed up. I went into a group. It's like a great bunch of people, but I was the youngest in the group when I joined. And now, thank God, I'm not the youngest in there. But when I did join, it was a very welcoming environment, right? You need to find your tribes, and what I mean by this, humans have existed in this world because we were a tribe. We are alive right now because our ancestors chose to stick together and grow and help each other. So that was the thing, was finding your tribe is very important. And tribe is something they help survive. They help you find a deeper meaning in you with the simple things they give. So comedy was finding my tribe basically. And I think what I would want to teach people is to find your tribe, see who helps you be and enhance the better version of yourselves. And that if you want to keep them around, you have to communicate with them. Um, and essentially, from that, I went into acting for a while. Now, that was a crazy experience itself. And now I do commercials, I do, short films sometimes. I had a film that was made on my life behind the scenes. Because even now, as a comedian or someone into acting, or even running my own organization, I appear in places like a Pikachu, right? What I mean by this, when you see me outside, or even right now, I'm dressed, I have a makeup done and everything, and people think it just appears. They don't realize this is not being real. This is In a sense, I don't just pop up like this. It's a whole process that goes into this. And to me, this is taking care of myself. And what I mean by this is that people need to know to value themselves, to take care of themselves, to take time to do that. Because if you don't, you will burn out. I think in today's generation, and I think particularly to the Asian culture, is that we never feel like we're doing enough, right? So even right now, when I started comedy, in between I was doing activism, I was doing awareness campaigns, and while doing all of this, is that I was getting burned out. Yes, I found my hope by doing comedy and by doing activism, but I was burning out because I was not taking care of myself mentally. And being mentally strong is very important. Acknowledging mental health for you to do things is very important. And that actually was one of the main things that drove me to do what I do. Now, one of the key things in all of this was also adapting to your environment, to the situation you are in, is very important. We really cannot, I think, survive if we don't adapt to our environment and our situation, or even to what we're dealing with physically. So if you ever do deal with a stressful moment, or where you feel like you cannot get out of it, it's hard. It's very easy for me to say that, oh no, think of positive, think of something real, but that's not realistic. It's not realistic at all. um but what is something that we can train our brain to do is to think more reasonably, even in the most stressful situations. And that has occurred to me many times. There were times I wrote a script and it got deleted from my phone, where I wrote it from the whole program. It got deleted and I couldn't retrieve it. Um, and that was my stressful moment. But when I calmed myself down, I was thinking, okay, instead of going by the script, why don't I lay down quickly what I did in the past, what I just dealt with, and dealing with that, right? So this was when I calmed myself down, I was able to think more reasonably and to think what to do next. Now, this was a part of comedy. Now, when I started doing activism, one of the key things that I dealt with was that everyone that I met judged me automatically by my age. So, just to give the context, I started comedy mainly when I was 16 years old, but I didn't really call myself a comedian. Uh, by then, I started calling myself a comedian 1 year after I did comedy, because I wanted to be better at it, right? And then call myself a comedian. And that was a process itself. So I was like, why not expand it to move comedy into activism? I was doing these two things separately. And one of the big things that changed my comedy was that talking about also my daily experience, instead of mocking the culture or society 24/7, I spoke about my own personal experiences. Like I would be sitting in a restaurant and this waitress comes and talks to me like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, she'll be talking to me in this manner, like, do you know what I'm saying? Do you know what, like, and while giving me the menu. And I just looked back at her and I'm like, are you okay? Is something wrong with you mentally? Is everything fine? So when I spoke to her back in that manner, she realized what she was doing was wrong. And this still happens till today. And the first two times it happened, I was very offended. I was like, "What's wrong with you? Like, fix yourself mentally." Like, I was like, "What is wrong with your behavior?" It's not to do more with the mental, but it's more to do with manners, and that these people didn't take time to educate themselves. And I have dealt this from teachers in different positions, not necessarily people just in a restaurant, but also in very high educational places, people you would consider to understand that disability is normal, but they still didn't view it as normal because they kept looking at them from a medical perspective. When it comes to understanding disability, or even the whole part of us in society, is that we're always seen from a medical point of view. And a medical model is essentially the society is trying to fix us, that something is wrong with us, and that we need to be fixed, and trying to cure us all the time. This was something I even deal with till now, right? Now I'm 21, and as a 21-year-old, people still come up to my parents and try to give them remedies, or do this will fix Nawal. Do this will cure Nawal. And they're still viewing me from a medical model. A medical model has something, it's been very ingrained in our society to try to fix us instead of accommodate and adapt with us. So the social model is basically teaching the society and even educating ourselves that people with disability don't need to be fixed, but the society and the education system and even the work environment needs more accommodating. And it's actually not that hard as people think it is. Now, a very good way of proving this, that as a society we can still adapt, is specifically in Corona, like in this Corona time. And is that because, all of the things that like I was advocating for in Doha for the past 10 years, for a more accessible education. Why can't we move it online, or some way of doing it in a more accessible way? Not even just online, but what I mean by this, that we can implement all the changes if we focus together. Now, during the Corona time, the entire society, what I mean by this, WHO, government, society came together and made all these changes very fast, just because they wanted to. And now we realize, when the society, the world, the government gets together and does some focuses on one thing, they can actually make it change. Meaning, our government, our society, our culture is not caring enough to do these changes. Now, realizing, coming back to all of this, consuming all of this, because I've been doing comedy, activism, acting since I was 14, 15, 16 years old. So now, all these years of doing it, one of the main things is adapting, understanding, it can be more of, it's nothing wrong with us. Sometimes we can do everything perfectly, but for someone that is not enough, it will never be enough, even when we do the right thing. So the main thing is that do the right thing and move on. If they don't change, they don't adapt, find another solution. There are always solutions to that problem. And particularly dealing with people, if a person wants to leave, not help, it shows more of who they are, and it has nothing to do with you. And trust me, in the world that we live in, regardless of how many things that are bad, there are many things that are good. There are many changes in our society that are coming if we focus as a tribe instead of the individual, which is very important. One of the main things is that with all these changes, was something I wish people realize, that trying to push through and seeing everyone as a competition doesn't help in the long run, because even the most successful people alive right now, even the most successful people right now need help. They are normal human beings. Um, I think people forget to realize that we shouldn't be putting anyone on a pedestal. And we keep seeing this happen, you know. As someone with a disability, what I realized, sometimes people were being nice to me not because of they were understanding what I was saying to them, was just because I was disabled. And I think this is a very big misconception people have, is that they are automatically nice to anyone with a disability without seeing and talking to them as a person, seeing them beyond their disability, them as a person. Um, and I think also communicating. I think for me, even till now, seeing what I done, it gave me the chance to meet politicians, diplomats, and people in the governmental sector, artists, you name it. I have met people in all these different circles. And what made me realize, one of the key things that pushed all of these people forward was how they communicated with people. The power of communicating with people on an empathetic level goes very far. It teaches us how to understand people and how to not to get them to do what we want, but more of understanding where's the middle ground. Where's the middle ground to make these people understand what we're trying to say. And I think a lot of people in their professional life, personal life, they forget the importance of building bridges with people. I think if I went and stopped talking to people when I was 14 years old, and I continued to do that even till now, I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't communicate with people. I didn't tell people what was going on wrong. This is a very big thing that I realized. Um, the power of communication is it crazy how amazing that it is, and also admitting where I am wrong. There's sometimes I've been clearly wrong, and it took me a while to understand. But I put my ego away. I think our ego is not bad. It can be used in a very good way when we do it right. But where it's harming uh, something you really care about, whether it's your work, your personal life, or even yourself, um, that it could be a really bad thing, and that we need to be okay with apologizing, with moving forward, um, and it's also forgiving ourselves, and letting go. And I think people don't realize that even when people meet me, they think I have it all together, and I don't. I think one of the big things of growth is that knowing that we need to let things go, and it helps us, I think, break the burden down when we do that and learn to do that. Um, I'm at this point. It's because of these one of the things that I'm still learning. And I think people don't seem to understand that the whole point of life, that we still have a chance to grow regardless of the age. I know people that in their 60s and 50s, they felt stuck in their life at their age, was because they felt like they knew everything. They have nothing to learn. And for them, it's meeting different people that made them realize that there's still more to learn. And I think with me, it's the same thing, that I learned that different points in my life. Um, sorry, 1 minute, I'm fixing something. So basically, one of the things in my life that it made me understand, I know as a 21-year-old, and 21-year-olds think that they know everything when they don't. And I clearly know I don't. And one of the big things in my disability that I'm very grateful for, it taught me to actually be open to change, be open to different opinions because of my disability, right? Something that I think people I think forget to understand, that the way people behave sometimes, it's also onto them have they met themselves inside that makes them understand and emotionally communicate with people. Um, and I think this is a very big thing in my life, that understanding that part of my disability is change, and that change is forever part of my life. Now, I know people in their 40s that are developing mild disabilities, right? Or eventually that is something normal with age, that something happens. And that there's a lot of times we sit and we pity ourselves, if we had more money, if I was from this nationality, I was this or I was that, life would be better. But I think people don't understand that what we're wishing for, it might come with a whole different set of struggles that we don't know how to accommodate or deal with. So focusing on the present moment is more important. Being content with what we have in the moment is very important. And I think our future is not, you know, what can I say? I'm trying to find the right word for this. That, people think that if in the present moment something is going wrong, it determines our future. And I think that truly does not. What's going on in our present moment and our future will be defined by how we handle the moment right now, what we focus to do right now. Sometimes we feel like it's impossible to find solutions, right? We think that what we're dealing with right now is the dead end. Nothing will get better from this. And it's just to understand that whatever outcome we want in the future can only be determined of what we focus to do right now. Where if we try to think of the future, what will happen then? What will I do then? We haven't dealt with then now. We're only dealing with it now. And because I go through that, when I sit and I think about my disability, I'm like, what if in the future I'm not able to do this or that, or what if I don't have this, like, more of the materialistic point of view, and I think a lot of people go through that, and I have that struggle too, and I fail to realize even the things that I have right now is what I'm meant to have right now. What we're meant to have, the situation we're dealing with, are meant to be in our life. It's a part of our growth. Nothing is permanent. And I know these are words, these are something I'm very easily saying. I understand that. But helping us shape ourselves to our situations and growing from it. And I think the way I view it, I know this is maybe dark for some people, but I think understanding the dark parts of ourselves and dealing with those, admitting the bad parts of ourselves, are the only way to grow. I still there's some bad parts of my own personality that people think I don't have when I do. And the only reason I was able to move this far in between was because I admitted all of the bad things about myself, to grow and be open to criticism. I know it's very hard for people to take criticism of themselves, but we need to remind ourselves that, firstly, I do understand there's some people that say very negative parts about us, and we need to realize we shouldn't take. There's a difference between criticism and being rude, and we need to find the balance. What is actually criticism that people are giving us, and what is actually rude? And I think there's two differences. That one time, I was in a situation that a person was very uncomfortable with my disability, so they were making suggestions to me. Oh, don't put photos of you and your chair online. People might not like it. People might leave comments. But to me, I'm content. I don't think it was something bad. I don't think it was something, you know, um, ugly or rude. And if they want to be uncomfortable, they can leave. Why are they viewing what I'm posting, what I'm writing? Makes them uncomfortable. And it made me realize, if they're leaving or saying something negative or don't want to be around me, that's their loss. That's not criticism. that is a person who has a low insecurity and also are uncomfortable to changes around them. And I know I'm saying this, and some people might not agree, but this is just my personal experience and what I learned was right, that majority of the people like this that I dealt with were very insecure. They were focusing their time too much on what other people say and do instead of doing what was right and what they loved. Doing what we love is very important. In today's world, I understand there are three parts. What I realized, that one thing I should do what I love, that feeds my internal, that gives me a meaning to life in a way. Now, finding something that gives us meaning in life and to help us, sustain. I'm only 21 years old, but I'm still someone who's trying to find work. But I realized this in different ages, that if people, don't focus on, working for what helps them, sustain themselves, have a job, have a house, meet the basic needs. But I think people forget to meet the needs of their passion, what gives them meaning. So even if you have a car and a job and a house, if it doesn't give you any meaning in your life, what I mean by this, it feeds the creative side of yourself. Sometimes it will never be enough, you will always want something more. And not because you lack something, it's because you're not feeling content within. Um, and I think this was, I think, Nisha, I think I would want to close off on this part at the end, that feeling content with yourself and your things is very important, in my opinion. Um, it has taught me that being content with myself will also attract people into my life that feel content with themselves and comfortable with themselves. These people will not gossip or backbite and will be very clear with their intentions when they come into your life. And I think that is just the last thing, I would want to share with people, that even when you do go through different parts of your life, try to focus on finding the solution, adapting yourself, knowing to always, be aware of more present, trying not to think of the future. And I think what has helped me even thus far, is being calm even in the chaos. So chaos could be anything. I have had moments of chaos, in my life, which, I mean, for people, who have never dealt with it might find it stressful. There were times these are quite funny moments, but people would around me panic, but I would be very calm. There are times I fell off of my chair or got in an accident, or these types of extreme things happened, or I found out a very bad news. And I think what made me go through all of this in my childhood, the education, the disability, dealing with community, it has gotten better. But what helped me be okay with it, that all of these things happened, was that they were meant to happen, and also that they were just a part of my life. It helped me shape who I am, and also just being content with that, all of this happening. That it was not my fault, it was just meant to happen. And I think people are also very hard on themselves, when it comes to all of this. Regardless of all of this, talk on how to adjust and adapt to life and focus on the solution, I do want to share one of the main things why I do all of this is to just educate people on disability, to see it not just as like as something inspirational or something, but also to understand it as that it's very normal. It's a normal part of life. It has existed throughout many generations, and it will continue to do. And that now I just wanted to bring in the more, um, practical side to make people understand something. And I want to bring up stats. I prepared specifically for this. I wanted to bring up some stats. I'm going to share my screen. Share screen. that, you know, the whole point of doing all of this was that I wanted people to understand, firstly, now the so what we do know about people with disabilities, to understand, they're the 15% of the world's population. And, you know, with that, keeping that in mind, 2.2 to 4% experience, you know, significant difficulties in functioning. And that could literally be anything. Yes, even wearing glasses is a disability. Let me see. As we already spoken about all of this, let me bring in the now as a whole, everything that I started was more of the disability awareness through social media, and wanting to educate people that, firstly, you know, with social media and everything going on, we can always use what we're learning right now to educate ourselves to do things better. And with social media, it has made everything easier to connect and educate people. Now, whatever we want to bring in and we want to talk about to improve the world, we need to use our social media to push further than, you know, people showing off what they're drinking, eating, traveling, is to also bring in that we can use it to make changes in our society. We're one of the world's we in our generations, we're the most connected generation that to ever exist. So the best way to use our platforms is to use it to talk about deeper things. And I think people need to push further to talk about um, more meaningful topics that hit us from our emotional needs. That when we as a society talk about everyone within the community and think about each other, we can push forward. Now, one of the conclusions I want to bring into all of this awareness, what I want you as a parent, as an individual, or someone that has no idea about disability and how to help. And I think one of the conclusions I want to bring in that if you want to make a change, you want to help the disability community, look into your country's national plan, constitution that include people with physical, intellectual disabilities in your national plan. So, you know, including people with disabilities deciding laws and planning services, making sure disabled people are getting the same rights as everyone else, whether it's work, education, or even in personal life services. Now, finding ways to hold people accountable. People without disabilities need to be the ones speaking up on these issues also. Um, because if their right is being taken away, your right is being taken away. So that's why we need you as a person sitting and watching this, that it's very important um, to very important to speak up on these issues. You don't need to be disabled to talk about disability rights. You can always do it anywhere you're sitting with people around you. All you need to do is just care enough. And at the last of that, if you want to help people with disabilities, help by either donating to their projects, their organizations, or or either just helping promote in your workplace more disability rights and how to include employees with disabilities. So I think with all of this, I would like to wrap it up. Nisha, I think I would like you to take it from here. Yep. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nawal. I had heard you before in the TEDx session, and now when I was hearing you, I mean, people concentrate so much on the challenges and problems that they don't see the solutions that would be just in front of them, right? They just ignore the solutions because they are so focused on the problems. So thank you so much for bringing our attention towards all these things and how to remain positive, calm, and solutions oriented rather than focusing on the problems. Now, I would like to open the question and answer session. And the questions that I have received here for you is, what keeps you motivated, or what keeps you, what gives you that motivation to keep on going?
I think reading, honestly, what I like doing, I like reading the news. I like keeping up with what's going in our culture, society, world. And I know a lot of people get depressed reading this stuff. I understand, but I think people need to learn to just they can even look at the positive news. Oh, what is positive going in their country? Because trust me, when there's a negative, there's always a positive to something going on. So just reading has helped really expand my mind. Because when I talk to people, or they say, "Oh, how are you knowledgeable? How do you know this? How do you know that?" And I think people forget that majority of the time when they do meet, they think that I'm in university or college or I graduated, when actually I haven't done any of those things, and that all I did was just read, and which made me understand better of to use that to motivate myself or anything. The more you read, it helps you motivate yourself to do things, and maybe it would even give you ideas on how to do things better. So I think those are one of the main things I think, is that reading about life, or even philosophy, and I think that has kind of helped me mature, and also understand how to motivate myself to do new things, to motivate myself to do something better, is reading. Trust me, 100% reading. That's it. Read different things. It will motivate you to do something.
And what would be the one thing that you would like to share with us for this pandemic? This is
Mm,
also a very challenging time. So what would you be, what do you want to share with us? Your
I think,
suggestion.
okay. Okay. Now I've been reading a book named Wabi Sabi. Now this is just a book, I know, but like it's Japanese philosophy, and I think in this pandemic, with everything going on, and we're reading all these complicated words and situations and everything going on, is to make our life simple. Understand that these things happening right now are not permanent. I think pandemics even happened in the like just 10 years ago. I think in like 2007, there was a whole like it was around the pandemic, but also a recession that happened just 10 years ago. So it's not that far. And what we realized, how people survived in that time, was making things very simple. The way they eat, the way they dress, how they do their habits. I'm not saying you need to cut off everything that you do, and that seems, no, it's not that. It's taking care of yourself and making things simple, not to overthink. That eventually, yes, there are bad things that are happening, people financially, jobs, different things, but to realize you can always, with the power of internet, we can find something, okay, but also to make things simple. What I mean, solution based, and also thinking to make things simple. Don't overcomplicate it. In this pandemic, we're having like this thing, I call it the corona brain, where we're so hypersensitive, and hypersensitive in a negative way, where we're just over, it makes us overthink everything. It just make everything simple. That's it. That's it. Just make everything simple in your life. So that would help you get through this time. Yeah. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Nawal, for the time and for the wonderful stories and examples that you shared. And that it was such an inspiring session, because, as when we are hit by any challenges in life, we just lose hope. And what we need to do is to just look around and see there are people with even more challenges and problems in life, but they are living life with, so much power and hope, looking forward to their future. So thank you so much for the session. And I'm really honored, and I'm so happy that you accepted the request to be here. And it was long pending. I know that I have tried to contact you so many times for different sessions, but
So
it
sorry,
did not
Nisa, and
happen.
also your side, even thank you for hosting these talks for everyone. I think it's giving them something to look forward to in this pandemic, where we're very closed off from, human connection. And I think, Nisha, what you're doing is you're bringing human connection back into our lives through these talks. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nawal. And I hope to see you again, probably after a few more months, when I will be conducting a special session with all my guest speakers. And thank you to each one of you who attended this session. We will see again next week with a new guest speaker. Till then, happy weekend. Take care. Bye.